Hey guys, Black Bart here, bringing you a little bit different of a video, but we're going to get into all of the uniques that are in the game now that I finally have them all, and after about 120 plus hours in game, we finally got them all. But we'll go ahead and get into some of these. A lot of these, if you've played, you've probably already seen, so we'll just kind of blast through the lesser uniques, and then we'll get into what I think could make some of these better towards the end of the video. Anyway, let's get started. We got Quintet of Sundowns. This was something that was in the tech beta. This one happens to roll all the same stats every single time. Not sure if that's a bug or not. But the main thing about this is it allows the bearer to cast sacred spells. So basically bulwark at this time. But there should be more sacred spells coming in the future. So we'll see how this interacts later. Then we have Shimmering Shadows, which adds shaded and shadow damage for tanks and stuff, and it's got a lot of HP. This will be pretty good later. Right now, shaded and shadow damage, when you're dealing with ailments, is really effective, but it really makes the server angry. So you got to be careful with this. Better solo, definitely not usable in groups yet, because of serviceability. But yeah, it's got a lot of max health, so this will be pretty good in the future. Legacy of the Willbreaker. This one has like a little mini Retaliator on it, and I believe that Retaliator is supposed to be shield only. So this will combine pretty well for damage to increase it from 3% damage per physical resistance to 4%, which is a pretty good little boost. As well as some health regeneration, which is always good. Then we get into 7th Purifier's Legion Archive. This one's really interesting on the stats. It looks like it's built for a combo battle mage, but there's no availability right now to be a battle mage because there's no real skills around that. But it's that. Abolition's Act is a tanking thing, makes you crowd control immune, but so you can't be knocked back, you can't be frozen, but actually I believe you can still be knocked back. You can still be interrupted, but you can't be frozen. I'm not sure if this is working 100% properly, but for a tank it's helpful, although we've found other tank variations using pistol with Mermaider with Red Rum that seems to work a lot better. But this is an interesting take on it. You have a one-hand fire sword. He's just not very good. It's got a bunch of random stats on it that aren't as good as any uniques or any anything like this. I mean, there's no way it'd ever come anywhere close, so I'm not really sure of the usefulness of this. Envy's Denial has a lot of burn chance on it. Burn Ailment has a ton of lag on the servers right now, so this isn't very helpful. But I do find it interesting that the damage is increasing against frozen targets, and that you have all burning damage on this. So not really sure how that applies, but it should be an interesting interaction later in the future when we get some of these values fixed. The Apex is a bleeding axe, increases bleeding stack damage. Haven't really found too much use for this yet, although we're still kind of messing around with it. Life Leech is okay. 5% is plenty enough at this stage to be able to fully heal yourself, so that's helpful to be on a weapon, so you don't have to put any stats into it. And we see the combination here between Goremaker and the Apex, and they seem like they would go very well together. Having a lot of Ren damage on the Goremaker here, which is just straight up bleed chance, that's it. So these are like a natural pairing. But since they don't have sockets, they're not all that great. Anyway, then we have Edict. 2.1, 0.4, 0.1, 0.7. Not sure if that's the official name. It is strange that there's a period at the very end and in between edict, but anyway, small stuff that doesn't really matter. The fact that this does not have a damage range on the initial melee hit concerns me. I haven't been able to find any higher than like 6 to 17. But this has poison chance, has attack speed scores, got poison stack damage. It could be very interesting, given a little bit more damage, honestly. Edgy. I don't know why I have a level 5 edgy here. I think because I've thrown away so many, I just forgot. But percent melee weapon damage is always good. And then flat physical. But again, it has the same ailment as all the others, where the low level, the non-sockets make it pretty bad by comparison to any legendaries in the game. Vanity's Plea, Frost Attacks, Freeze Chance Score. Oh, okay. So Vanity's Plea and Envy's Denial are supposed to be used together. You see on this one is additional damage to frozen targets. This one has additional damage against burning targets. So those two should be paired together. So I guess that's a one-hander. I got that mixed up. Next is Zephyrons, Herald of Change. This is probably the closest to being a usable two-hand weapon because of the high amount of damage added to attacks. You also have the ability to cast lightning spells. I find it's interesting. I haven't been able to make it work yet, but we'll see. Maybe this could be used on a caster, but then you lose a lot of transfer ability with rage to willpower. But it is interesting. We'll see how that one works out. Regards Hope. This one's most interesting because it's the only one of the uniques that actually has sockets. And I believe, because this is possible, that all of these should have the ability to have sockets. Now, I don't think it should always be 3. I think it should have a chance to roll 3. But yeah, I definitely see this as good hope for having something usable out of these in the future. But basically, this just makes you stun when you dash in, which is kind of interesting, and I like the idea. In combination with some other parts, you can get a lot of stun going off. Might be good utility. Evokins? I can never say this one. The Obsession. The bow that came from the tech beta. 2 additional projectiles is pretty cool, but again, very much lack of damage. And we've only really been able to find anything useful in support builds, just because the damage is so low. Just on bows specifically, compared to pistols. Bows just are pretty worthless right now, unfortunately. And I do hope that changes in the future. Then we get into this, a couple of the staves here. We have Zapstick, which sounds extremely interesting and just doesn't work. I have not been able to get this thing to work. Again, a lot of the ailments cause a lot of lag on servers, so it's rough. But basically, you're supposed to shock and add that damage, and you don't do enough damage with the ailments to clear anything, so it's really rough. Chronocell is kind of a support-driven item where you would add stasis with your attacks, which would be your casting specifically with the staff itself, which is interesting. But there's no other support along the items that you would need to be able to turn this into a support build. So I'm still kind of playing around with this one. This one's as close as it gets on on really any of these to being somewhat useful, but not quite. Now we get into the accessories. The accessories are... Oh, I'm sorry, there's a weapon down here. Regicide Mark III. Actually, a decent starter on pistols before you get a legendary pistol. It does pretty decent damage. It has Pierce built in. It's got material damage. It's got everything it needs except for sockets. If it had sockets, it would actually challenge most legendaries until you started getting crit hit damage. But yeah, again, another one of the same problems that we've had before. Now we get into the accessories. We have some returning and a couple of new ones. Well, actually, yeah, 2 new ones and a bunch returning. So you have Sargonaris here and Sagarnaris. Not going to be able to say that correctly ever. This has just flat damage increase, which is terrific. Toxic damage, poison chance, all good stats on this item here. Nothing exceptional, and no socket again. So you will find yellow and legendary items that are better than this, but this is really good. Thirst here, kind of your go-to for any spellcaster. It has a max range of up to 60% spell damage, which is absolutely necessary if you're running a spell build. Spell cast speed's good, wisdom's good, those are all terrific, at the cost of max health. I think the max health is really strong on these, and I think it should probably be nerfed just a little bit because it's not really that much damage that you're increasing, but it's still a good item either way. Then we get into one of the newer items, which is 3 Crowns Brooch. This appears to be worthless when you look at it initially, but we found a lot of builds that it actually works very much for. So movement speed's always good. Dodge chance is terrific once you start stacking enough of it. And then the agility only boosts that further. And then the stamina regeneration delay just increases how many dodge rolls you have. This is really good for a tank. If you have like 65 plus dodge and you go and throw this on there, it jumps it up to 70 or so. It's pretty good. Again, at first glance, it looks really bad, but it is useful. O'Malley's here. This is kind of a controversial item because it's got Magic Find on it. You know, a lot of people find that Magic Find is absolutely necessary to wear, especially when it's 50% Magic Find. But I haven't noticed any difference wearing it, and I've done a lot of tests on it, so I'm not sure if it's just not working or if the change is really negligible. The really powerful stat on here is the fact that you have 20 all attributes on it, which is really good. Really good for damage, really good for survivability. With the dodge chance score increased on here and your status element score on here, this is a pretty good item. So, just in general, if you find one of these, you can wear it. 7 Sisters, tank, pretty much specifically item here. A lot of max health, terrific for that. Wisdom for ailments, regen, rage on hit, global life leech. This is just a terrific item all the way around. We should have socket, but yeah, that's that. Seal the Arbiters, I believe, are probably the most powerful thing in the game because they're combined with the most powerful skill in the game at the moment. You can throw 2 of these on, you get 120% increased damage out of an item at the cost of attack speed, but the attack speed doesn't affect your skills. It only affects your auto attacks. So, yeah. And this also has crit damage on them, up to 20%. And then Frosty, which increases your crit. I mean, this is a crazy item, especially when you have 2 of them on. And you've seen that in my 100 and... Let's see, what did we get up to? We got 130k crits with Bleeding Edge in a group, which is just insane. And it's all because of this. Next up is going to be some of the rarer ones. So these 4 are the rarer ones. These you'll find all over the place all the time whenever you're grinding. But these 4 over here are pretty darn rare. So we have Galnazic, I guess. Very interesting stuff on here. Definitely caster item. 18 wisdom is probably the only universal item. If you're doing anything elemental, the cost reduction is awesome. 30% is insane. Fire damage increase, crit chance. I'm not 100% sure if that's crit chance score on lightning damage. I haven't really done much testing with lightning damage, but we'll take a look at that here in the future. And then you have freeze chance score. So this isn't a flat freeze chance 30% increase. It's 30% of whatever your base is. It's still pretty good though. And it's got decent stats on it, so health and force shield, terrific. Then we move over into some of the more chase items. You have Envoy of War, which is amazing. 14 to, I think it goes up to 15% damage range. Is insane on attacks, especially in combination with this one here. You wind up getting some crazy attack increase. And then you have the really important part of this, which is 5% gained per rage point spent. I think this is overpowered because you're going to get a gazillion HP every time. Bleeding Edge uses 400 rage. That's 12. What was that? That's 2,000% HP every time you use Bleeding Edge. That doesn't make sense to me. I think it's supposed to be 5 flat health gain per, but even then, that's 2,000 HP per. So I think that needs to be knocked down a little bit to make these a little less crazy. But actually, I should say a little less mandatory on any build that uses rage. But anyway, good item, terrific to find. I have 2 of them, makes most people jelly. The next item is Argon's Hearth, another item that makes people jealous, but reduces dash cooldown, which is interesting because you may have an interesting reaction here. I haven't tested yet, but increased flat damage. It's the only pair of gloves that has increased flat damage to attacks. It's got crazy material damage increase, and then agility. So this is just a good all around, which is insane. You lose some survivability putting these on, but yeah, most people just say, let's increase their damage a lot. Then last but not least is the hardest one that I had finding, which is the Smile of Searing Song. I found this just the other day, which has prompted me to make this video. It sounds kind of weird, but it is very good. So, only weakness can be applied. So it takes all of your ailments and gets rid of them, the actual ailment itself. So you can stack whatever you want on your weapons, you can stack whatever you want, and the only thing you're going to apply is weakness. Every single one of your attacks is going to apply weakness. That's pretty powerful, especially if you have stuff like Pierce. Then you can apply weakness to everything. Convert Force Shield into health, kind of cool. It kind of sucks because like teleporting from teammate to teammate, if you get touched by like the smallest little thing, it'll interrupt it. This Force Shield keeps you from being interrupted, but it's pretty good. It doesn't increase anything there, but I guess it would because your passive skill tree has increases on like percentage increases on how much HP you have, so that's pretty good. And then you have maximum health, which is good. This is the highest damage, the highest health range I've seen, so I'm not sure how high it goes because I've only seen a couple of these in game. And then just percentage resistance score, which goes towards damage usually and HP, based on the builds that I've been putting together with Retaliator. That brings you all 28 of the uniques that are in the game. That they announced on their Trello that they had 28. So I'm confident that this is all of them. Plus I've put in just over 120 hours in the past, well, since the beta released. So yeah, it takes a little while to get all these, especially these right here. These 4 are probably the hardest to get. This many of. Most people have put in the amount of hours that I have or longer and only gotten one of each of these, or one period or none. Case of Red Rum. Feel sorry for him. But yeah, anyway, that's where we are with with the uniques. The problem that I have is that gems are so powerful, and we're only looking at level 20, 25 gems. Gems are so powerful that they make any items that do not have gem sockets on them worthless. By comparison, for damage side of things only, they make them worthless. for staves and stuff that where you can get like regeneration and things like that, those are really powerful. And things without them lack quite a lot. So it pains me, but I believe that all of these uniques, even the rings and whatnot, should have the opportunity to have sockets on them. I think on rings and such to be really rare, rings and belts, these kinds of items, they should all have. I'm gonna put that back on before I freak out. They should all get sockets. That would solve a lot of the problems that we have with them, and it would make them a lot more effective. Two-hand weapons. Right now, I believe I've done a bunch of testing. We'll leave that for a later subject. We're going to go into what we can do to make these items better. But I think they have a lot of interesting interactions with each other, interactions with the passive skill tree. They're just not usable because they don't put out the same damage as something like this. So like if I take a look at, there's no maces. Oh, here's an X, right? I'm not trying to swap an item. I'm trying to put it there. This item here is an X. This item here is an X. My damage range is a lot higher. I have 3 damage rolls. I have crit damage. I have attack speed. I have crit chance. Insane amount of damage top end. I have 80. It looks like here with the gems that I have on it, I have 86. On this, my top end damage potential is 59 on the top end damage. That is unacceptable. That is almost like having 2 of these on, nearly that big of a difference, because there's no sockets in here. If there were sockets in here, then you're looking at them being only 6 apart. So this one would have 6 more top end damage, but you wouldn't have crit damage on it. You have some of these other stuff that you can kind of put together to make something work, but right now it just does such little damage by comparison to the legendary items. And legendary items are not that hard to get to where it would be like, oh, it's a chase item and like that's the end all be all, and then you start off with this. But without sockets, this is almost worthless. Like against like a yellow, the yellow still does more damage, and that's a little frustrating. So I think that should be addressed. And we'll get into two-handers. That's a whole nother subject. I want to make a whole video on two-handers because they're absolutely worthless right now. And I think there's some certain things that we need to do to be able to make those, bring those back. Anyway, because they're awesome when you see the attacks and stuff, but they just don't do any damage. So anyway, I am now blabbering on. Thank you for coming out, guys. Thank you for sticking all the way through to the end, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.